Welcome, YouTubers, to another episode in my Grammar Hero series. In today's video, we're going to be talking about simple interest, which is a topic that frequently appears on both the arithmetic reasoning as well as the mathematics knowledge subtest of the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. More specifically, we're going to discuss the simple interest formula to start this video, and then after that, we're going to work on 5 practice problems that should closely mirror what you'll see on the ASVAB. As always, I strongly encourage you to make an effort to work out all the problems you see in today's video on your own scratch paper. That is, after I read a question, you should pause the video, attempt to work it out on your own, and then resume playing the video to see if you and I came up with the same solution. Again, on the ASVAB, you're not allowed to use a calculator or a reference sheet. And so in light of that, you do have to commit this formula to memory, and you have to be able to do all the arithmetic involved with finding simple interest. As I mentioned, we're going to start today's video by reviewing the formula to calculate simple interest. It's right here. And as we can see, it's I equals P times R times T, where I stands for interest. P stands for principal, which is the amount you originally invest or borrow. R stands for interest rate, and that's always in decimal form. And then T stands for time, and that should always be in terms of years. So for example, let's say I had $1,000 I wanted to invest. Let's say the bank said they'll give me 5% on my investment. So we would express that in decimal form as 0.05. Let's say I was interested in figuring out how much money I would earn on that investment after 5 years. By taking 1,000, which is my principal, and 5%, which is my rate, and 5, which is the time I'm going to invest this money, and multiplying them all together, I can figure out how much interest I would earn on that investment. Similarly, let's say I took out $10,000 to buy a car, and the dealership said they would give me a 12% interest rate on my loan. We would express that in decimal form as 0.12. And let's say it was a 4-year loan, so that would be 4. By multiplying 10,000 by 0.12 and by 4, I can figure out how much interest I would eventually owe on that loan. So in short, that's how the simple interest formula works. In addition, I want to mention this, and we'll see this as we get to the practice problems. If you're given 3 of these variables in the simple interest formula, you can, of course, find the 4th one using some simple arithmetic. In these first 2 examples, we were given P, R, and T, so we found I. If I give you I, P, and R, you can find T. And if I give you I, P, and T, you can find R. So just bear in mind that, again, if you're given at least 3 of these variables, you can easily find the 4th one. And similarly, let me just point this out. In some questions, we're going to be asked to find the total amount earned on your investment, or the total amount you owe when on your loan. And total is simply your principal plus interest. Okay? So just be mindful of that as we work on some of these practice problems. We're going to see examples in which we're going to have to use this information as well. So all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with some practice problems that are going to mirror what you'll see on the ASVAB. Again, I encourage you to work out these problems on your own scratch paper. For the most part, they're pretty straightforward. So number 1 says a bank is offering 2.5% simple interest on a savings account. If you deposit $5,000, how much interest will you earn in 1 year? Okay, so this is a simple interest problem, so we're going to use the simple interest formula to figure it out. That's I equals P times R times T. Let's identify what we have as far as the interest formula goes. This 2.5% we should realize is our R. We know we deposited $5,000, so that's our investment, our principal, so that's P. And we want to figure out how much interest we'll earn in 1 year. So we can see our T is 1 year, and our I is what we're trying to figure out. So let's plug those things in. Again, I is what we're trying to figure out, so we'll leave that as I. Principal, as I mentioned, is 5,000. R was 2.5%. To express that as in decimal form, that's 0.025. And T was 1 year, so we're going to put 1 in for T. All right, so to solve for this one, all we do is have to multiply these three things together, as we can see. 1 times anything is itself, so 1 times 0.025 is just 0.025, so we can simplify this by doing 5,000 times 0.025. As you can see, we're multiplying a whole number by a decimal. I like to do this work off to the side so as not to make mistakes. So let's go ahead and do that. That's 5,000 times 0.025. And as I mentioned, we're doing a whole number times a decimal. In order to do this by hand, you have to shift this decimal such that it becomes a whole number. So in this case, I'm going to shift this decimal in 0.025 3 times to the right to make 0.025 just 25. And I'm going to take note of how many times I move that decimal, because once I'm done doing this arithmetic, I'm going to move that decimal back into the left. So again, in reality, I'm working this out, 5,000 times 25, albeit with 3 decimals to shift back into the left at the end. And again, I got those decimal places when I shifted this decimal to the right. All right, so let's work this out. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. 5 times 5 is 25. Before we start multiplication with this 2, we have to add a 0 placeholder. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. And 2 times 5 is 10. Let's add these up. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 0 is 2. 1 plus nothing is 1. Shift R 3 decimals back in. 1, 2, 3. So we can see that in this savings account, after a year, we'll have accrued $125 in interest. Okay, so that was this one. We were just asked to find I in this case. All right, so let's move on to number 2. It says to buy a car, Jessica borrowed $15,000 for 3 years at an annual simple interest rate of 9%. How much interest will she pay if she pays the entire loan off at the end of the 3rd year? And what is the total amount that she will repay? Okay, so we're being asked to do 2 things in this case. We want to figure out what interest is, and then we want to figure out what the total amount she'll have to pay back is. So let's start by writing down the simple interest formula. That's I equals P times R times T. Let's identify what we have. We know she borrowed $15,000, so that's our principal. We know the loan was for 3 years, so that's our time. And we know she got an interest rate of 9%, so that's our R. Let's go ahead and answer this first question by figuring out how much interest she'll have to pay on this loan. That's going to be I equals, principal is $15,000 times R. Her interest rate was 9%. We have to express that as a decimal, so that's going to be 0.09. Time was 3 years. Okay, so let's work this out. In order to be successful on the ASVAB, you have to get comfortable doing some mental math. In this case, I'm going to do 0.09 times 3 mentally, and we should realize that 0.09 times 3 is 0.27. Okay, you could work that off to the side if you wanted to, but this one should be pretty easy to see. Again, 9 times 3 is 27, therefore 0.09 times 3 is 0.27. Okay? And again, now we're doing multiplication, albeit with a whole number and a decimal, so as not to make any mistakes. I'm going to do this off to the side. That's going to be 15,000 times 0.27. And as I mentioned, we're doing multiplication with a whole number as well as a decimal. In order to proceed, we're going to have to take this decimal and shift it 2 times to the right, such that 0.27 just becomes 27. We'll take note of how many times we move the decimal. So in reality, I'm doing 15,000 times 27, albeit with 2 decimals to shift back in to the left at the end when I'm done. So let's work this out. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 5 is 35, so we drop down a 5 and carry a 3. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10. Before we start multiplication with this 2, we have to add a 0 placeholder. Now we can start. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 5 times 2 is 10, so we have to carry a 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. Let's go ahead and add these up. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 0 is 5. 0 plus 0 is 0. And 3 plus 1 is 4. Let's shift our 2 decimals back in. That's 1, 2. So we can see the amount of interest on this loan would be $4,050. So that answers this first question. How much interest will she pay if she pays off the entire loan at 3 years? That's $4,050. What is the total amount that she'll repay? So I quickly mentioned that total is found by adding your principal to your amount of interest owed. So in this case, we know our principal is $15,000. We know I is $4,050. So to find the total that she'll owe, we're going to take $15,000 plus $4,050. All right, and let's do this off to the side so as not to make any mistakes. It's 15,000 plus 4,050. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 4 is 9. And 1 plus nothing is 1. So in total, she'll have to pay back $19,050 if these were the terms of her loan. Okay, so those are our two answers, $19,050 and $4,050. Okay. All right, number 3 says Nancy invested $6,000 in a bond at a yearly rate of 3%. She earned $450 in interest. How long was the money invested? Again, this is a simple interest formula, so we're going to start by writing down that formula. It's I equals P times R times T. We're told that she invested $6,000, so that's our principal. We know her yearly rate, or R, is 3%. And we're told she earned $450 in interest, so that's I. We want to figure out how long the money was invested, so that's going to be our T. So in this problem, we're given P, R, and I, and we're going to figure out what T is. So I is 450. Principal was 6,000. The interest rate was 3%. To write that in decimal form, that's 0.03. And T is what we're trying to figure out. Okay. So as you can see, we're going to be solving for T in this problem. That said, I want to do this arithmetic real quick. I want to do 6,000 times 0.03 just to get it out of the way. Again, we're doing multiplication, albeit with a whole number and a decimal. In order to proceed, I'm going to have to take this decimal and shift it 2 times to the right to make 0.03 just 3. So in reality, I'm doing this problem 6,000 times 3, albeit with 2 decimals to shift back in to the left when I'm done. This is 0 times 3 is 0, 0 times 3 is 0, 0 times 3 is 0. 6 times 3 is 18. Shift our 2 decimals back in. 1, 2. So we can see 6,000 times 0.03 is 180. And of course, that's multiplied by t. So this is 450 equals 180t. To get t by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 180. This is going to cross out, leaving us with just t over here. And as we can see, t equals 450 divided by 180. To make this math a little bit easier, I'm going to cross out these corresponding zeros. So this reduces to 45 divided by 18. In math, it's customary to write the variable for which you're solving on the left. So as my next step, I'm just going to flip-flop these two. So I'm going to go t equals 45 over 18. It should be obvious that 45 and 18 are factors of 9. So I'm going to reduce this a little bit further by dividing the numerator, that is 45, as well as the denominator, that is 18 by 9. 45 divided by 9 is 5, and 18 divided by 9 is 2. So we can see time equals 5 over 2, which we should know is 2.5 years, or 2.5. So this would be 2.5 years. Oh, my pen's acting up a little bit. That said, let's say you couldn't figure this out mentally. This is the same as 5 over 2, or 5 divided by 2. Again, all fractions can be regarded as long division. So 5 over 2, again, is the same as 5 divided by 2. So now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 2 go into 5? That's 2 times without going over. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract 5 minus 4 is 1. 2 doesn't go into 1, so we have to add a 0 there. And in doing so, that's going to prompt us to bring up a decimal there. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 2 times 5 is 10, so we can see there's no remainder. So again, given this information about her investment, we can see that she must have had the money invested for 2.5 years in order to have earned $450 in interest. All right, so again, that's an example where we were given I, P, and R and asked to find T. Number 4 says, Mr. Johnson borrowed $8,000 for 4 years to make home improvements. If he repaid a total of $10,320, at what interest rate did he borrow the money? So right away, we should see that we're going to be trying to solve for R. We want to figure out what his interest rate was for his loan. In addition, we're told that he borrowed $8,000, so we know that's our principal, for 4 years, which is our time. Beyond that, we were told that he repaid a total of $10,320. So this is the total he repaid. The simple interest formula is I equals P times R times T. And as I mentioned, if you're given at least 3 of these variables, you can figure out the other one. In this case, we want to figure out R, but we only have P and T as far as we can tell. We need to figure out what I is in order to use this formula. Thankfully enough, I mentioned that to figure out what I is, you take your total and you subtract your principal from it. So we can figure out I pretty easily given the information in this question. That's I equals total. In total, he paid $10,320, and his principal was $8,000. Okay, so interest in this case is going to be $2,320. And again, that's one you have to be able to do in your head. 10,000 minus 8,000 would be 2,000. Tack on $320 extra to that. So now that we have I, P, and T, we can figure out what R is by plugging these things into the simple interest formula. Again, interest is $2,320 equals principal, 8,000. R is what we're trying to figure out, so we'll leave that as R. And T is time, and we said that was 4 years. So let's go ahead and try to get R by itself. Before I do that, I'm going to do 4,000, or 4 times 8,000. Again, 4 times 8 would be 32. Therefore, 4 times 8,000 is 32,000. Of course, this is times R equals 2,320. To get R by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 32,000. This is going to cross out, leaving us with just R on this side. And as we can see, R equals 2,320 divided by 32,000, which is a lot of work. We can reduce this a little further by crossing out these corresponding zeros to make that 232 divided by 3,200. But before I do this long division, I want to reduce this a little bit further. So I'm going to divide both the numerator as well as the denominator by 8. Again, I know, and this should be 3,200, not 32,000. One too many zeros there. Sorry about that. So I know 32 is divisible by 8. 32 divided by 8 is 4. Just tack on those 2 extra zeros. Now I got to figure out if 232 is divisible by 8. So let's do that. 232 divided by 8. 8 goes into 23 2 times without going over, given that 8 times 2 is 16. 23 minus 16. 3 minus 6 we can't do. We have to borrow. This becomes 1. This becomes 13. 13 minus 6 is going to be 7. Drop down this 2. 8 goes into 72 9 times. Okay, so this reduces to 29 over 400. So again, we can see R is 29 over 400. And again, we can regard fractions as long division. So this is the same as 29 over 400, which I'm going to go ahead and work out. I don't think I can simplify this any further, so I'm going to work this out. 400 doesn't go into 29, so I have to add a 0. When I add that 0, I have to bring up a decimal. Now I'm asking myself, how many times does 400 go into 290? It doesn't, so I have to add another 0. And when I add that 0, I now have to add a 0 there. Now the question is, how many times does 400 go into 2,900? Well, I know 4 times 7 would be 28. Therefore, I know 400 times 7 is going to be 2,800. Let's subtract. 2,900 minus 2,800 is simply 100. And now we have a free 0 to add in if we need to. 400 doesn't go into 100, so I have to add that free 0 in. 400 goes into 1,000 2 times without going over. 400 times 2 is 800. 1,000 minus 800 is 200. And if I need to, I can add in another free 0. 400 doesn't go into 200, so I have to add in a free 0. 400 goes into 2,000 5 times. 5 times 400 is 2,000, so we can see there's no remainder. So we can see the rate is 0.0725. And in math, it's customary to write the variable for which you solved on the left. So this is going to be R equals 0.0725. And again, in terms of a percent, this is 7.25%. So we can see that for his loan to make home improvements, he got an interest rate of 7.25%. And pretty tedious problem, but it's a good review of how to do some long division. All right, number 5 says John's parents deposited $1,000 into a savings account as a college fund when he was born. How much will John have in this account after 18 years at a simple interest rate of 3.25%? So let's go ahead and write down the formula for simple interest. That's I equals P times R times T. Let's identify what we have. We know they deposited $1,000, so that's our principal. We know that that accrued for 18 years, so that's going to be our T. And we know they had an interest rate of 3.25%. And we want to figure out how much money's in the account in total after this amount of time. So in other words, we're going to be figuring this out. Total equals principal plus interest. In order to figure out the total, as you can see, we're going to have to figure out what the interest is using the simple interest formula and then add that amount to the principal. So let's go ahead and work on this one. Again, interest equals P, which is 1,000, times rate. We're told that he was given a 3.25% interest rate. In decimal form, that is 0.0325. And we're told the money was invested for 18 years, so that's our time. Let's go ahead and work this out. Regardless of how you do this one, you're eventually going to have to deal with some big numbers. So I'm going to do 1,000 times 18 just to get it out of the way. 1,000 times 18, of course, is 18,000. And of course, that's times 0.0325. As you can see, we now have to do multiplication, albeit with a whole number and a decimal. So let's do this one off to the side. It's going to be 18,000 times 0.0325. And in order to proceed, I have to convert this decimal into a whole number. And I'm going to shift its decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 times to the right to make 0.0325, just 325. So in reality, I'm working out this problem. 18,000 times 325, albeit with 4 decimals to shift back into the left at the end. Let's go ahead and work this out now. We have 0 times 5, which is 0. 0 times 5, which is 0. 0 times 5, which is 0. 5 times 8, which is 40, so we add a 0 and carry our 4. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. Before we start multiplication with this 2, we have to add a 0 placeholder in. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 8 is 16, carry a 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. Before we start multiplication with this 3, we now have to add 2 0 placeholders. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 8 is 24, carry a 2. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. Let's add all this up. 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 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 9 plus 6 plus 0 is going to be 15. Carry a 1. 3 plus 4 is 7. Plus 1 is 8. And 5 plus nothing is 5. Bring in our 4 placeholders. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can see the interest in this case is $585. That said, this question's asking us to figure out how much money's in the account in total after 18 years. So again, we're going to plug I into this over here. That's total equals principal. That was $1,000. Interest was $585. So we can see our total amount in the account is going to be 1,000 plus 85 are $1,585. Okay, so that is the answer to this one. Again, you'd think it would be more, but unfortunately they only invested $1,000, so it's really not that much. So that's it for today's video. Admittedly, it was, as most of my videos are, pretty comprehensive. That said, I hope you found it helpful. Again, in order to do a lot of the problems in today's video, we had to use decimals as well as long division, which are things that frequently appear as smaller parts of larger problems in the ASVAB. So it was a good review of that. By all means, if you like the content I'm creating, please consider subscribing to my channel. In addition, you're more than welcome to leave feedback in the comment section below. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose.
Konnichiwa.